A magistrate's court in Ikiti is set to rule on a bail application brought before it by human rights lawyer and activist Dele Farotimi Abayomi Adeosun. The magistrate had deferred ruling on the application to today, December 20. The earlier ruling had kept Farotimi in prison custody. During the court proceedings, the 16 counts charge earlier filed by the police against the activist was reduced to 14. Farotimi pleaded not guilty to the 14 counts charge. Before the last proceedings, Farotimi, through his counsel Adeyinka Olumide Fusika, filed a preliminary objection asking the court to strike out the charge. The preliminary objection was anchored on 5 grounds. The activist argued that the charge before the court was unknown to law and that the court was acting without jurisdiction. The activist also averred that the offense of defamation is not recognized by the criminal law of Ekiti State 2021. Farotimi is currently facing trial in 2 courts on charges bordering on the alleged defamation of Afe Babalola, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Let's now cross over to Ekiti, where our correspondent Bettina Nweli is standing by at the magistrate's court. Good morning to you, Bettina, and would like you to quickly give us an update on what's happening there around you.
All right, we're here live in Ekiti State, the magistrate court, where the case against Mr. Dele Farotimi will be taking place this morning. Earlier on, we already saw the arrival of different counsel and activists who have come on his behalf. We're waiting for the judges to get here and for the case proceeding to actually begin. Now, for the benefit of those who are not following the story and do not know what happened, as at the 10th of this month, the last court hearing that we had here, the Chief Babalola, the son, initiated legal proceedings against Farotimi, who pleaded not guilty to all 16 counts during the hearing. Now, the police prosecutor opposed the appearance of a senior advocate in Nigeria to represent Mr. Dele Farotimi, saying that it was not acceptable under the law, and that was also shelved as at last time that the court proceedings held in this place. Another issue that we're also looking towards is the bail of Mr. Dele Farotimi. The last time the bail proceedings were not quite finished and the case was adjourned till today. So 2 major things that people are looking out for are, number 1, to see whether the son will be allowed to represent him in this case of defamation, and number 2, to also see whether the bail will be granted today, saying that the last time that the court proceedings held, it was not quite finished before the case was adjourned.
Very interesting there, and just like you've mentioned, you're starting to see people come in ahead of when the trial will begin. But can you lastly tell us, what are residents in Ekiti State saying? What are they saying about this particular situation, this particular case?
Well, we spoke to one of the counsels for Mr. Dele Farotimi this morning just as he was arriving, and he's of the opinion that Mr. Dele Farotimi is just being used like a scapegoat because there are bigger fishes in the country's economy who have stolen and done grievous crimes, who have still not been apprehended, but Mr. Dele just came and, came to speak his mind. He's also of the opinion that Mr. Dele Farotimi should be granted bail, saying that he has a big name to his chest and he has proved himself all through the years, and that the benefit of granting people bail during such proceedings is so that they can prepare for their defense. But if you lock him behind bars and he's unable to prepare, then what then are we about to say of the law of the country? So that is the stance of one of his legal practitioners, and we'll continue following the case to see how it unfolds when the judges arrive and when the case itself actually begins.
All right. Thank you so much, Bettina Nweli, for keeping us up to date with what's happening there in Ekiti State. We'll definitely circle back to you in the course of our news bulletin. Thank you. Let's move on now to our next story and tell you that troops of the Multinational Joint Task Force, MNJTF, operating under Sector 1 in Mora, have successfully repelled a coordinated attack by Boko Haram, ISWAP terrorists on the military base at Darak in Cameroon. The operations led to the elimination of 10 terrorists in the early hours of 18 December 2024. The attack began at dawn with the terrorists launching assaults from multiple directions at the Darak military base. In a fierce gun battle, troops swiftly engaged the terrorists, eliminating 6 terrorists and forcing the others to flee with varying degrees of gunshot wounds. Unfortunately, 5 soldiers sustained injuries during the encounter and are currently responding to medical treatment. Away from that story now, let's head to another part of the northern Nigeria where a bomb explosion in the Basa community of Shiroro local government area of Niger State has left one person dead and 4 others injured. Eyewitnesses say the blast occurred Thursday morning as the victims were heading to their farms. Ahmed Al-Mustafa, a local resident, confirmed that 3 of the injured lost their legs and are currently being treated at the IBB Specialist Hospital. Al-Mustafa, who is related to 3 of the victims, revealed that this marks the second bomb explosion in Bassa this month. The community is calling for increased security measures to prevent further tragedies as residents remain on the edge. Authorities are yet to issue an official statement. Well, let's tell you that residents of Yobe State in Nigeria's northeast have expressed gratitude for improved security conditions across the state, attributing the peace to collaborative efforts between communities, the government and security agencies. This is as the government has assured residents of continued safety and security with plans to further develop the region. News Central's Umaru Kirawa has more in this report. We would bring you that report after the break. But let's quickly go for a break and tell you that when we come back, AJF declares suspension of Edo State Local Council Chairman illegal and unconstitutional. We have that story and, of course, the report after the break. Thanks for joining us here. Still telling you more stories. Let's go back to our story concerning residents of Yobe State in Nigeria's northeast who have expressed gratitude for improved security conditions across the state. Our correspondent, Umaru Kirawa, tells us more in this report.
This is Bayan Tasha in Nigeria's northeast state of Yobe. People go about their daily day-to-day activities after years of fear.
There's peace. There's nothing you can fear. We are doing business. The business is moving. Before people are fearing, I've already said here, let's call it more than 30 years. There's nothing to fear about the Yobe State now as regard to security.
Alhamdulillah, mu dai muna yaba gwamnatin jihar Yobe a kokarin da ta yi akan gefen tsaro, kuma alhamdulillah mun samu tsaro da gwargwado har mutane yanzu suna iya fita ma su je su noma.
Yobe State government noted that the state's security situation had vastly improved over the past year, with insurgent activities significantly reduced.
Our administration continues to make every measure necessary to strengthen and improve the security of life and property of people across the state by supporting and partnering with the security agencies. I want to use this opportunity to commend the services of the Nigerian Army, police, civil defense, and all other security agencies and other own local vigilante groups for what they do to keep us safe.
This shift in the security landscape is said to have allowed for a focus on reconstruction and development.
2024 saw the launching of the largest area empowerment support for farmers in the history of our state. Through our agricultural revitalization program, the sum of 15.3 billion naira was spent to provide farm implements and inputs to 5,340 farmers across the 178 wards of the state. Our efforts in the healthcare sector led Yobe State to win $500 in the primary healthcare leadership challenge for states in the northeast of region.
Yobe State, and indeed Nigeria as a whole, cannot thrive or make any meaningful progress without peace and security, and the participation of all citizens requires that the mass media must always focus attention on what brings people together, not what sets them apart. The media must be a uniting factor in our state and in our country.
The Yobe State government promised that it will continue to prioritize security, ensuring a peaceful environment for the rebuilding process and business activities in the region. In Damaturu for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Well, let's move on now and also tell you that aside from the Crime Experience and Perception Survey released by the National Bureau of Statistics earlier this week, it did show that more than 2.23 trillion naira was paid as ransom by victims of kidnapping incidents that occurred between May 2023 and also April 2024. And this comes despite the substantial funding approved by the federal government for 7 security agencies tasked with ensuring the safety and protection of citizens' lives and property across the nation. According to the NBS report, an estimated 51.89 million crime incidents were experienced by households, with 51% of these incidents perpetrated in rural locations of the country. The crimes reported are theft of cars, burglary, theft of livestock, theft of crops, murder, theft of motor vehicles, home robbery, and kidnapping. Well, many wonder where this actually leaves the conversation on kidnapping. Well, let's now join Professor Chris Mustafa Nwakobia, who's with us in the studio to help us make sense of this as we look at this story now. Chris is also the convener, Country First Movement, and this conversation has indeed generated or sparked a lot of reactions, different reactions in different quarters. First of all, we've seen the amount spent to ensure that insecurity is curbed. But then again, this report comes out. What do you make of it?
My pleasure to be here. Let me say clearly that it was a famous American criminologist, Holmes, who said that the society prefers the crime, the criminal commits it. Oftentimes, my leader told me a long time ago that one of the tragedies with our country is the fact that we have left unattended fundamental issues of state, which is education, one, which is job creation, two, which is strong, profuse, and profound national orientation, which is good values, if you like. And unfortunately, there's some kind of celebration of the get-rich-quick syndrome. There's some kind of celebration of wealth by any means. And so you were to have a young boy who's 18, 20, or 23 come back to the village or to the parents with a brand new car, and rather than ask, what is your vocation? What job do you do? They praise God. They salute the Almighty, and they throw a feast. So I think basically what we have as a problem is a moral disconnect. What we have as a problem is the unwillingness, if you like, of government to address the fundamental issues of state. But you see, when I got the topic, the first thing that caught the carapace of my mind was, how do we reevaluate? How do we reignite a sense of patriotism? How do we check the fundamentals that spurs and spawns criminality? How do we address these fundamental issues? And the first thing is, it was Chinua Achebe who said a long time ago in his book, The Problem with Nigeria. And he was profound about saying that leadership is at the core of the problems. And I'll tell you why. If leadership is engaged in profligacy, on inexplicable spending of our resources, if leadership is engaged and involved in wanderlust, traveling from one part of the country to another without fundamental reasons, if leadership were involved in not pursuing due process and pursuing corruption, it does look like what pays is criminality. It does look like what passes is criminality. And that's why we're where we are. You know, it's harrowing, troubling, burdensome to think of the fact that over 2 trillion in 1 year was paid to non-state actors who engage in kidnap for ransom. And I've said repeatedly in various fora that besides larceny and corruption, which is a seeming vocation of the political class, the next most lucrative business, quote unquote, is kidnap for ransom. And I've been vindicated by the Bureau of Statistics. But you see, I haven't come here to cry wolf. I've come here to speak to my country and my countrymen. I've come here to say that if we truly want a country that works, we have to look at how we put primacy on education. Interestingly, in the budget proposition, you know, the appropriation bill as proposed by Mr. President, education comes third, about 3.5 trillion. I hope they follow through with it. Because the truth is, an educated society will scorn crime. Look at Europe. You know, most of Europe is largely safer than any part because they put primacy on education. And I think that that's what we must do. And then fundamentally, if we must address these fundamental issues of state, governance and leadership must be true to what it says on paper.
All right. Let me quickly come in here. A lot of persons have said, why is it that it's hard to arrest, apprehend, and ensure that we catch the perpetrators of these evils? Why is it so hard? Why is it that kidnapping has continued to thrive, and yet there hasn't been a hold on these kidnappers?
I just told you why. It's big business, you know, and this is not being unfair to the Nigerian military. It's about a gamut of corruption. It runs from the executive to the judiciary to the legislature and then to the armed forces. There is an unwillingness to address these fundamental issues. I'll give you an instance. As you and I talk, the Nigerian waterways has been policed by a non-state actor. The contract to protect your oil fields and oil pipelines is in the hand of a non-state actor, invariably indicting government and the armed forces. That's point number one. And then it does look like it's right. No distrust for my brother Tompolo and Tantita, but it does look like it's right, but it is not right. You have the Navy, you have the Sea Police, you have the military police, and then you have a non-state actor, private individual protecting your waterways. And these are issues that we must, you know. And then when you look at it, criminality has become a very lucrative business. I've told some of my friends who care to listen that it's an anathema to think of the fact that non-state actors can protect your facilities more than licensed and registered security establishments. And then it's also an anathema that the same armed forces that protected about the whole of West Africa, remember the days of ECOMOG, cannot deal with insurgency in the Northeast and the Northwest. And then one of the things my late father told me is that when we planted the evil bean, we forgot that someday we'll all harvest rashes. That's what we have. The whole of the North Central that has the highest level of criminality has left fundamental issues of states in the hands of armadjuries, street urchins, and so they have grown bold and stronger. And rather than abide by the law, they have become the law unto themselves. And this failure of state, this failure of successive administration must be addressed now. If we don't address it, we will increasingly degenerate and deteriorate to a position where might is law, where wrong becomes prevalent, and nobody, you know, that's exactly why when you're talking about the level of criminality in the Northwest, you can understand that it is more of a protest movement.
Rather than what we see now.
Just what you think.
Let me also ask you, the president has presented the appropriation bill. Security is very high there, having about 4.9 trillion naira. Do you see this enhancing our security apparatus and ensuring that very soon, especially with a new security chief and of course the police talking tough, do you think we would make progress?
I would think that we will make progress if the leadership shows the political will. There's a difference between what is said on paper, and that's why my mentor, Martin Luther King Jr., said a long time ago that we must be true to what we say on paper. 4.9 trillion, fundamentally salutary. Now, what is the commitment of government to ensuring that these questions of insurgency, criminality, kidnap for ransom, and villainy is fundamentally addressed? You know, because that's what is important. You know, I could make you platitudes, I can make you promises, but what do I really want to achieve? And then we must understand that our quest for the new republic, our quest for the new dawn that is prosperous and successful, is predicated largely on what we do with security. The reason we have food shortage and food inflation and crisis is because farmers cannot go to their farms. And where they endeavor, where they desiredly and deservedly want to go to the farms, they have non-state actors asking for taxes from them. And so there is a major problem in our land. And what I think, and this is my appeal to Mr. President and to his minders, when we criticize government, when we challenge government, it is not because we hate government. It's because we love government and we love our country. The way to go is to show the requisite political will to address issues of national security effectively, efficiently, and effectually. And I think it can be done, with a laudable 4.9 trillion for security. If they follow through with proper orientation and understanding between the military forces, the paramilitary forces, and the communities and that's why I love the mantra, kinetic and non-kinetic approach. If we follow through it effectively, we shall have a safer country and our businesses will sprout again.
Well, hopefully these are part of the things and the issues that Nigerians are hoping will definitely lead to a complete removal of insecurity as we see it in Nigeria. I want to say thank you so much, Professor Chris Bustafanwa-Kobia, for joining us here and having this conversation. And hopefully we'll get to hear from you pretty soon again.
The pleasure is mine.
Great. All right, let's also tell you that political stakeholders in Kano, the Kano state capital, have begun moves to rally the electorate to support less popular and less financially endowed candidates ahead of the 2027 elections. The group says that this will encourage voter turnout, eliminate voter apathy, and strengthen the nation's democratic and electoral process. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu has more in this report.
State in Nigeria with a voting population of 5 million registered voters. However, voter turnout on election days have always seen a little over 3 million voters coming out to exercise their franchise. Some politicians have blamed the waning popularity of political parties for this, proposing an alternative movement to change the status quo.
You are calling them Muslim.
Popular politician Segun Shewumi is assuring the electorate in Kano in this town hall meeting that their new movement will amplify new independent candidates to make the 2027 election more competitive and create opportunities for less financially endowed candidates to contest the polls.
Why would a nation have about 93 registered voters and less than 9 million will install a president? It's not a problem that the man won. The problem is what were the others doing on the day of the election. Now, in case you thought that the election of the president was not the most important for them, with the exception of Kano, even all the other states during their state elections, you don't see them turn up. And you know it's quite expensive for them to give them the PVC, and they collect the PVC for free. What then will be the reason why they're not even available to use it? First problem. Is it that they are frustrated and unhappy with governance or with the democracy? We thought we need to re-engage them. If we have been bringing you leaders and they've not satisfied you, we have come to tell them that the alternative ways now is that go and find us the leaders you want and bring them to us so that we can then push them forward. Maybe you will be satisfied. Then we've also thought about the fact that the whole concept of the recruiting model for political parties to throw up good leaders is beginning to become injured, because it seems like instead of the parties to be ideologically based, they are now a cult of human personality.
Some of those present say they will key into the new movement.
This is about us entirely. It's not about a single person. It's not about Jafar Sani Bello. It's not about Segun Shehu Mimo. It's not about anybody, but it's about us.
We're calling on His Excellency Peter Obi, Dr. Rabi Musa Konkoso, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to look at the alternative as the coalition platform.
With barely 11 days to the year 2025, it is anticipated that more political activities and initiatives will continue ahead of the 2027 general elections. In Kano for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, has declared the suspension of chairman and vice chairman of the 18 local government areas in Edo State as illegal and unconstitutional. The AGF, who spoke to journalists in Abuja Thursday, stressed that removing from office or suspending any elected local government official in the country was the prerogative of councillors in the said LGA. The Justice Minister said his position was based on the July 11 judgment of the Supreme Court that granted autonomy to the 774 LGAs in the country. He said his initial reluctance to react to the development was because he wanted to know the basis upon which the LGA officials in Edo State were reportedly suspended. The Edo State House of Assembly suspended the chairman and vice chairman of the LGAs for 2 months over the alleged gross misconduct and insubordination. The Assembly directed the council leaders to hand over to the legislative leaders of their respective local governments. Well, let's now bring in John Akirile from Saitama in Japan. John, you've run for office in the past. What do you make of this latest story? Shall we call it either a face-off, or what would you rather term this one?
Thank you for having me. Good morning to our viewers and the world. I think for me, it also shows to you again the angle that our judicial system is taking. And I want to say kudos to Mr. Fagbemi for putting the record straight. I think the legal advisors of Mr. Governor Monday Okpewolo are in the best position to advise him on the present day terms and conditions as regards local government autonomy. As you know, the Supreme Court earlier, later this year, gave a verdict that local government autonomy is a standing order. And so that gives that right for local government chairman that the only people that can impeach a local government chairman or take them out of office are the councillors that are elected through the local government autonomy structure. And so a governor cannot single-handedly take out a local government chairman. Why? Because the governor never, imposed the local government chairman on the people. Rather, the people voted for the local government chairman the same way Mr. Governor was voted for in the general election. And so they should understand separation of power. There is a state and there is also a local government. And so all of these things, everybody stands as an entity on their own. The state government stands as an entity on its own. The local government stands as an entity on its own. That's why I see that with this local government autonomy, they get their allocation directly from the federal government without interference of the state. And so at this point in time, it is just separation of power that have been in the constitution over the years, but have not been effective. But now, looking at the Supreme Court pronouncement, it is now a settled case that local government can stand on their own. And so what happened in Edo State, for me, I think it's too early for Mr. Monday Okpewolo to start on this kind of note. So for me, he should talk to his legal advisors, he should talk to his lawyers, and they should advise him properly. And also, a sound warning also to the NJC. There are some of the lawyers who are at this point in time know the right thing to do and rather mislead their client. And I think such lawyers also should be sanctioned and then should be called to order rather than bringing a show of shame to our judicial system.
Well, great points there being shared. Anyway, let's quickly thank you for your time, and thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us here on News Now. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's still stay with politics and tell you that the need not to allow Nigeria become a one-party state has been re-echoed in an exclusive interview on Politics HQ with News Central TV. Gbadebo Rhodes Vival, the Labour Party's governorship candidate in Lagos in 2023, has sounded the alarm of Nigeria's democratic future. He warned that the country is at risk of becoming a one-party state, pointing to recent events such as the National Assembly's reaction during the president's budget presentation, where the federal lawmakers were seen reciting an anthem tagged "On Your Mandate We Shall Stand," a song meant for core loyalists of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
The type of politics that creates these dynamics that we're seeing is a politics of the political elite and their peers, and what is good for them is good for them. To hell with the rest of Nigeria. And that's what you saw yesterday. Because I don't imagine a Bukola Saraki as Senate president and that kind of thing would have happened in the Senate, right? Where is their respect? Where is their sense of self-respect? Where is their sense of identity? Where is their sense of representing a group of people that send them there? How are they holding this government accountable, right? These are the questions. But you see, again, it goes back to the process by which people get into office. And then also, when you don't have strong, courageous people in a state assembly, you find that the majority, the culture of the majority just completely encapsulates those that are there. I think that a Senate that would allow something like that happen, I mean, politics is over. Campaigns are over. Your job is to hold the president accountable. It's not to be singing his song. Then what's the point of having a Senate? Might as well not have a Senate. Let's scrap the Senate. If the president is just going to come and you're going to be singing for him, when your job is to make the needs of your people known and hold the president accountable and be that stopgap between the people and the president. Because outside of them is judiciary. And for judiciary, someone has to take the president to court. And the president is immune. He has immunity. So you, the Senate, are supposed to be able to stand and look for the interests of the people.
Well, you can catch the full show or interview which took place yesterday on our YouTube channel right away. A KwaZulu-Natal man, Subisiso Lawrence, has spiked outrage on social media after killing his girlfriend and sharing the incident on social media. The video, which has gone viral, has left many shocked and horrified. In the video, Lawrence justifies his actions, claiming he was driven by alleged ill treatment within their relationship. He later took his own life following the incident. South Africa has high rates of gender-based violence, including femicide, and the issue is complex and multifaceted. Let's now bring in ATM spokesperson Zama Shona, who joins me here on News Now. Thank you for being here with us. I did see that video, and I'm sure a lot of persons saw it as well. But what was your immediate reaction upon witnessing the video of the man confessing to killing his girlfriend?
Thank you so much. Good day to you and the viewers. Well, as the African Transformation Movement, we have to say that truly it is unfortunate that we still have incidences of this nature within our society. Truly, matters of this nature are showing that there are deeper lying issues that need to be addressed. This relationship, as according to the perpetrator, seems to have been a rocky relationship where one would even go into lengths of thinking that some issues were left unresolved and eventually the unfortunate happened. But for us as the African Transformation Movement, there is no reason enough justifiable for what Lawrence did.
All right, but how prevalent is gender-based violence in South Africa? We do know it's prevalent, but can you break it down for us, looking at these statistics, trends, and just like that video that we saw?
All right. When you look at 2018-2019, we're sitting at 58 murders a day, and that depicted 47 males killed mostly by males, 8 women, and 3 children. And that actually constituted 21,022 people were murdered. In just 5 years, we have moved from that scenario, which when you break it down and as according to sex, it is actually 17,237 males, and you have 2,771 females, and you have 1,014 children. The common denominator in the killing of all are males. When you move to where we are right now, we're sitting at 84 murders, and that has given us 27,500 in just the past year. To get an idea of how dire the situation is, the war in the Middle East, as according to records, when you look at what transpired in 2023 alone, you were looking at about 33,500. So South Africa is almost like equivalent to a country that is at war, and yet South Africa is not at war. So the problem is really dire, but I think it is important for us to actually properly diagnose the problem. The problem is not only limited within opposite sexes. The problem is wider than that. For what you find happening between Lawrence and his girlfriend constitutes 20% of the problem, whilst what is happening amongst men actually extends to 80% of the problem. So at the center of this are men who are exhibiting violent tendencies, are men who are exhibiting the traits of no emotional intelligence, men who have no anger management capability. So this, even you go further, if you go to suicide in South Africa, we are averaging at about 8,000 suicides a year, and 83% of those suicides are men killing themselves. If you go to road accidents, if you go to criminality and those who are incarcerated, if you go to substance abuse, there seems to be a common denominator in the destruction of South Africa, and that is us men who are at the center. So if we are to properly diagnose the problem, we would know that as gruesome and as unaccepted as it is, what is happening between male and females, males in this country are doing a great injustice to society by actually destroying society holistically.
I want to say thank you so much for breaking it down for us there. But lastly, are there laws and laws that protect and also policies that effectively address gender-based violence in South Africa? If there are, which I want to believe there is actually, how effective is it?
The biggest problem is that it doesn't matter how many police you deploy, you can't deploy them in every battle. It does not matter how many life sentences and even consider a death penalty. The one who is a victim is already dead and they are not going to come back. Not until you raise a level of consciousness for each individual to police him or herself so as to shun away from doing wrong, you are not going to win this. We have laws in abundance. We are incarcerating, we are giving them life sentences, but the behavior is not actually, these sentences are not deterring people from actually doing this. So we need a new strategy because paying for sins through retribution and deterrence in terms of harsher sentences alone seem to be not working.
Mr. Sharma of the African Transformation Movement, thank you for joining me here on the news this hour. Welcome back. Let's tell you that authorities in Mozambique say the death toll from Cyclone Chado in that country has jumped to 73 from 45 reported earlier. The winds from Storm Chado were so strong that it ripped the sheets of corrugated iron right off the frames of homes. Mozambicans have started to pick up the pieces after Cyclone Chado caused devastation, leaving thousands of homes destroyed and dozens dead when it made a landfall in the country's Cabo Delgado province on Sunday. In Malawi, the toll rose to 13 from 7 after the storm hit continental Africa after passing through the French territory on the island of Mayotte. The U.S. House of Representatives has rejected a Republican-led funding bill aimed at preventing a government shutdown. The bill would have suspended the country's borrowing limit for President-elect Donald Trump's first 2 years in office. However, dozens of Republican lawmakers rebelled against their own leadership, sinking the package. With federal agencies set to run out of cash on Friday night, the government shutdown is looming. The contentious bill's defeat has raised concerns about the country's ability to meet its financial obligations.
On this vote, the yeas are 174, the nays are 235, one voting present. Two-thirds not being in the affirmative, the rules are not suspended and the bill is not passed.
A Russian missile strike hit Ukraine's capital Kyiv on Friday, killing one person and injuring several others. The attack occurred around 7 a.m. with Russian forces using Kinzhal and Iskander missiles. Kiev mayor, Vitaly Klitschko reported that 2 people were hospitalized and debris fell in 4 areas, setting cars and buildings ablaze. The Ukrainian Air Force had warned of an impending ballistic missile attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin had suggested a high-tech duel over Kiev to test Russia's new hypersonic ballistic missile. Ukrainian authorities also reported missile attacks in the southern port city of Kherson, where 1 person was killed and 6 injured. Well, that's all we have for you on the news for this hour. Before we go, let's take a quick look at our top stories. 10 killed as troops repel major terror attack on a military base. We have that story. We'll also tell you about Dele Farotimi, who would be standing a trial today again. And just as mentioned, of course, 10 persons have indeed also faced terror attack in terms of the attacks that's taken place in some parts of Africa. And death toll from Cyclone Chido in Mozambique has risen to 73. And that's all we have for you. But don't forget, you can watch News Central live by tuning in to DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and also on YouTube. My name is Joe Hansen. Thanks for watching. Stick around. The ladies will be here for 10 a.m. Just Siri is up next.